Some say the answer is to leave the UK for a better life, but what if the real solution is building right here?
The UK is your home. For most of you, you were born here. Your children were born here. This is your culture. So are you willing to accept that maybe you will only see your parents 10 more times for the rest of your life for this extra money?
And we have a laughing gas problem. We have an extremist problem. We have grooming gangs problem. These are way more important because these are affecting society.
We're building huge bank accounts for our mosques, extensions for our mosques, domes for our mosques, new carpets for our mosques, and our children are taking laughing gas. Our children are doing whatever else that they're doing, but they're not in the mosque. Money should be the last thing you think about. Think about the people, the human capital. How are you going to reach the people? How are you going to change them? You are never going to get an Apple in the Muslim world. You are never going to get a Microsoft. You're never going to get a Netflix. You're never going to get any of those. 1 in 5 of all drugs in the UK from that company, 20%. And I thought to myself, you know what would be amazing? More amazing than boycotting TV is to make your own.
Staying means sacrifice, but it also means building. The Muslim pound is more than money. It's vision, unity, and the future of Muslims in Britain.
Assalamu alaikum, doctor. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Call me Wajid.
Wajid, the Secretary General of the MCB.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. So, the first thing, I'm really intrigued to hear your answer. As the head of the Muslim Council of Britain, those people who want to leave the UK for a better life, what are your thoughts on that?
I can understand why people want to leave the UK sometimes when they have better economic opportunities abroad. Maybe it's tax-free, maybe better weather. But I would say that the UK is your home. For most of you, you were born here. Your children were born here. This is your culture. You know, you identify when you go abroad, they'll know you as English. I remember this very clearly. I actually grew up in the Middle East, and I was on Umrah. And at the Black Stone, there was a large group of people, and they were arguing and fighting, trying to get to the Black Stone. And I could hear a Brummy accent from the back saying, brothers, form an orderly queue. Please form an orderly queue. And everyone laughed at him. They said, you're not in England anymore. So even in the Haram, that person was identified as English. So I would tell people, this is your home. And of course, people can travel anywhere, but don't abandon ship. Don't be of those people who feel like, I need to save myself. I need to save my own family. And it doesn't matter what happens to everyone else. So even if you go abroad, you can still be helping the Muslim community here, or the economy here, or the society over here. But if you're here, you'll be far more invested. There is a lot. People talk down England, especially, Islamophobes and the right wing. Oh, look what's happened to London. Look what, it's still one of the best cities in the world. It still has some of the best facilities. It still has some of the leading and cutting edge science, technology, businesses. So don't be one of those people for a few extra dollars. The other thing I would say, apologies, it's a long answer. When they weigh that up, they usually only look at the benefits. They write, look how much money I'm going to get. Look how little tax I'm going to pay. And then I ask them, your parents are still going to be here. Yes. So how often are you going to see your parents? Once, twice a year, if you're lucky? How many more years do you have left with your parents? So are you willing to accept that maybe you will only see your parents 10 more times for the rest of your life for this extra money? Is it going to be worth it when they go? Or actually staying here, staying with your parents, with your cousins, with your nephews, with your nieces, with your children, with your community, your society, is that going to be something that's priceless? If you weigh those two up, then I think you will often find that it's a lot better. Stay here, build the Muslim society here, the Islamic society here, your community here, your mosque here, your madrasa here, your children's future here, inshallah.
But what about if they're thinking, well, why do we need to build here? Because what the public service is, they're decreasing in quality. It's getting more and more expensive. The taxes are getting higher and higher. So what is the incentive for someone to build here?
That's a very good question. And if you're going to look at it that, well, I think things are going downhill, it's time for me to jump ship, then let's be honest. You are a citizen of no land. You belong to the airport. And when that country that you go to starts doing poorly, then you're going to pack your bags and go from there again. So you're going to live your life constantly from airport to airport, country to country. Don't be surprised if you have no roots. Don't be surprised if your children don't grow up with a firm grounding because they never got to be anywhere for any length of time. Don't be surprised if you yourself feel like you don't belong, right? Yes, the land of Allah is vast and you can travel anywhere, but to be constantly traveling and to be constantly like an immigrant and not set down roots somewhere is not a great life. And I'm speaking as someone who has moved country myself. So at some point, it's good to say, this is my land, this is my home. And if it is, things are going bad, then why don't I become part of the solution to try to help improve it? As opposed to, why don't I jump ship to find the next place where I can benefit and then jump ship from there and jump ship from there? How many times?
If we're being honest, maybe 5% of people, of Muslims, maybe 10% can afford to move. But then are you then just dumping and leaving the remainder of people here just to basically fight and build for themselves?
Absolutely. Look, I don't usually bring this up, but I'm from India originally. And a lot of Indian Muslims, although we have a lot of love for our Pakistani Muslim brothers and sisters, we felt that in 1948, those who could move and those who had already were living in that part went, and those of us who couldn't were left behind. Now, and it really hurts when we hear them say, when we hear Pakistani Muslims say, thank God we weren't left behind in India. It's like, what's 200 million people supposed to do? They're supposed to up and leave as well. So yes, there is a place and a time, and we can't all leave. And people migrate for lots of reasons, but it's usually those who have either economic empowerment, those who are physically able to, circumstances allow, they will move somewhere nicer, and then the rest will struggle. There is something more to life than what's in your bank balance.
So what is the reason people should stay here? And what is there to build? Because if we look at it in the grand scheme of things, now let's compare UK to UAE. Okay, UAE might have, you have the masajid, but we have the masajid here. You might have a better lifestyle. It might be a lot less tax you pay. But people who move to UAE can't speak about certain issues or can't protest, or they can't speak about Palestine, if we're being honest, because they're not allowed. Whereas over here, at least we have the right to protest. At least we have masajid. We have probably better communities because the communities have been harvested over 50, 60 years. So for them, people who are looking to move and are on the fence, what would you say? Looking at them, things.
I won't use UAE as an example because it's an outlier, I guess. Because maybe there are other Muslim countries where you can talk and you can go and protest, etc. And you feel like, okay, well, I don't have to completely leave. But by and large, there was a group of scholars in Saudi. They were sitting around and they were discussing how to save the Muslims of the West. Because we're always in their head, they were like we were on the edge of becoming murtad, right? Leaving Islam. How do we save them? And their teacher sat listening to them and stopped. He said that you have it wrong. You are not going to save them. They are the ones who are going to save you. And they were shocked. They said, how could they live in the West and so on and so forth. They're exposed to X, Y, Z. He goes, the knife that is used is sharp. The one that is in the cupboard is going to be blunt. They have to struggle every single day to be Muslim, to hold on to their identity, to justify their faith when others challenge it. And because they do that, often you will find that Muslims here in the West, I know I'm generalizing, often you will find Muslims here in the West, they have a much keener sense of what's going on in the rest of the world and a much firmer grounding of their faith than in many other countries that we go to. And I have many friends from Pakistan or from Nigeria. They say when they go back, others see them that these guys are too extreme, right? Like, why are you, you don't drink a little, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? How do you know about X, Y, or Z issues and you're concerned about it? And interest is such a big deal over here. We have to start interest-bearing banks. Where are they having it in so many of the Muslim countries? So Muslims here have a special role to play. It is the sunnah of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sunnahs. And it is the sunnah of Allah that He always sends the saviors of the ummah from within the people where their oppression is coming from, for example. So it was no coincidence that the Prophet ﷺ was born in the Quraysh, the same people who were benefiting the center of the idol trade around the Kaaba. It was no coincidence that Musa ﷺ was raised in the palace of the Pharaoh. It's no coincidence that Ibrahim ﷺ is the son or the nephew of the idol maker himself, right? This is the sunnah of Allah, because here we have our ability to connect with Islam and also the best of what the West has to offer, where they have improved, whether it's technologically or scientifically or in terms of rules and regulations, all of these kind of things. We can synthesize these, inshallah, to build a better future for not just ourselves but for the ummah. So I think that, yes, you can go abroad and you will pray and you will fast and you will see mosques and you will hear the azan. But if you limit Islam to that, that's not Islam I recognize. If you see Islam as a guiding force that is here to bring benefit to humanity, to the animals, to the climate, to bring justice in the economic system, in the political system, then in order to really bring about that change, you need that perfect blend of freedom, of the Islam, of the immigrant community, which they've got that entrepreneurial mindset. You need that blend to come together, and that blend of different cultures, of different ethnicities, of different madhabs coming together, working together, is here. It's here in the West. Apologies. One last. I was at there was a brother who came recently from a different country, and it was straight after Jum'ah in the winter. And we were discussing, should we pray Asr? Some said 5 minutes, some said 10, 15 minutes. And he goes, what is a debate? And I explained to him, I said, brother, where you come from, everyone in 1,000 miles radius is Hanafi. You don't have any debates. The person praying next to you is a Shia, and the one next to you is a Maliki, and the other one, he doesn't even know what madhab he is. And you have to find a way to make it work so that we agree on what time we're going to pray. That is what the Muslims in the West have, that many of our Muslims abroad don't have. It's a special sauce that we can make work, inshallah.
So with the different madhabs that we have, back in the day, for example, when I was at university, it was always, you're not praying like this, it's a problem. You're not praying like this, it's a problem. So I spoke to, on this podcast, Imam Omar from Masjid Darul Ihsan in Barking. And he runs his masjid. He goes, we don't have none of that. He goes, before there was a lot of masjids where this is a Pakistani masjid, this is a Indian masjid, this is a Gujarati masjid, this is a Bengali masjid, this is a Nigerian masjid. But he goes, we don't have none of that, because how you pray is less important right now compared to the actual problems we have. And we have a laughing gas problem, we have an extremist problem, we have grooming gangs problem. These are way more important because these are affecting society. How you pray is only affecting yourself.
Agreed. I 100% agree. This kind of rhetoric you are finding not just from the imams, from the grassroots of Muslims in this country, right? And we're pushing forward. We're saying there is a problem here and we need to do better. We need to think about how are we going to tackle these issues. We need to think about how are we going to adapt artificial intelligence and build paradigms that are coming from the Islamic faith rather than just taking what's off the shelf and trying to Islamify it. We need to think about what's the best pay that we can give imams. We need to think about safeguarding in mosques. We need to think about getting more Muslims into education in different fields. So yes, you're absolutely right. This is a sign of a community. I know we get talked down a lot. This is a sign of a community that is healthy. A community that questions itself, a community that holds itself accountable, a community that is striving to do better is a healthy community. And I would say, again generalizing, that many of our brothers and sisters in communities abroad could benefit from that level of introspection, of ihtisab that we are currently building. We haven't got there yet, but we're currently building in the Muslim community in the UK, in the US, and other countries.
So there's a lot of people that I speak to and they feel that the Muslim community is under attack from the far right, from Islamophobes. And for example, you have the grooming gang issue. Now, if you go on X or Twitter, you just see them attacking Muslims. So Muslims generally feel that, okay, we need to defend ourselves because that's a natural reaction, I suppose. So how can we defend ourselves, but also within ourselves say, yes, there is an issue and we need to fix it?
I think it's very possible because the best defense is offense, right? We need to go out there and share our stories because we are being defined by the minority, right? We cannot pretend that this minority doesn't exist. We cannot pretend that these minorities that do wrong things and wrong behavior and issues in our community don't exist, because that would be to be false. But we need to actually go out there and share our stories. What happens is when the moral majority, and this has come back to why I think the Muslim Council of Britain exists. The moral majority, if it's not united, the immoral minority will represent you, because they will be what everyone sees. They will be the organized and they will be the loudest voices in the room, because the voices of the majority, the voices of the people who are running the soup kitchens, who are the lawyers, the doctors, the Uber drivers, all of our voices are not there. And what do you see? You see the voices of the immoral fringe. We need to share our own stories. We need to get out there. Like the social media has made it almost level playing field. You can say X maybe is not as much of a level playing field, but there's a huge difference now. There's nothing stopping us from really getting out there and authentically sharing what the Muslim experience is, the beauty for our religion. And what we're struggling with is the narrative. We're losing the narrative war because we're constantly playing on somebody else's pitch. They're saying, you're groomers. We're like, no, we're not. Some people are. So we're becoming reactive. No, you can't say that. Then they say, look, you're saying you're not dealing with the problem in your community. Oh, you guys are too many Muslims take the dole, or they're sitting around. The facts are, yes, too many Muslims. If you look at Muslim communities, far too many Muslims are not just unemployed, but on the dole, where they could be economically active. Yes, there are far too many Muslims who have very poor health. And this is not all, I'm not saying this is all our fault, but these are things that we need to engage with and we need to improve. And if we share our story, we're much more likely to win over those people, because the majority of the people are not racist. The majority of people are just listening to a story that they're being told. So if we can share our story, and this is something the MCB is very keen to do, we're unveiling a new communication strategy where we're trying to be proactive. So rather than reactive, we're going to be positive rather than constantly fighting back against the negative. And we're going to be really leaning into pro-social media, pro-local news, rather than just engaging. Up to now, we've kind of been thinking we need to get on the BBC 9 o'clock news. How many people watch the BBC 9 o'clock news? GB News has overtaken it. A random TikToker will get more views on one of their videos than maybe some of the legacy media. So we're going to be proactive, positive, inshallah, and pro new media, pro local news as well, inshallah.
So a lot of the far right, and you mentioned a few key points in terms of, yes, they say Muslims are on benefits, but also they say Muslims are taking our jobs, and they're saying Muslims are X and Y and Z. We're aware of that. But they also say Islam isn't compatible. Muslims are not compatible with the West. What would MCB do to flip that and say, no, actually, we're not just compatible, we're actually a benefit of the West?
We are. We don't need to do any kind of media manipulation or magic tricks to do that. The evidence is there. There's a report released by EQUI, think tank on the Muslim pound, and there was the Muslim pound report that MCB did ourselves about over 10 years ago. It shows that we are a net benefit to the economy in the tens of billions of pounds, right? whether it's restaurants, whether it's entrepreneurial, whether it's the young Muslims today, is called the demographic dividend. So our research and development team did an analysis of the census, and because Muslims make up so many of the young people in this country, on the one hand they say, oh, the name Muhammad is the most popular name, that's a terrible problem. But actually that means Muhammad will be paying the taxes for your retirement, for the NHS. That's what it means as well. So we need to flip that narrative and show that actually we are part of this country. And most of the country has adopted our food and they're happy with that. And they've adopted traveling to our countries, and they go to Turkey and, the Middle East all the time, or Morocco. So they've adapted a lot of our religion or our culture. And we don't want them to feel threatened. The reality is we need to show that we're interested in what they're interested in. We're interested in cost of living crisis. We're interested in housing. We're interested in safety. When someone stabs someone or steals a mobile phone, they don't check your religion before they snatch your mobile phone in London, right? Or before they stab you. They just stab or they just steal. And we're interested in that as well. So we need to win the narrative war, and then we actually need to deliver. We need to show that we can do this, that Muslim communities can act in areas which are of benefit, not just to ourselves, but to the whole of the society.
So do you think that would actually help bridge the gap from the ignorance of the far right regarding Muslims to the reality of what Muslims actually are?
Yeah, absolutely. Stories are very, very powerful. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that because there are so many stories in the Quran, and the Quraysh would say, قَالَ أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. These are stories of old. But, history proves that those who said it, they've been forgotten, and the stories are still there, because stories are how human beings communicate. It's how you unlock things. So it's by telling the story and by showing those stories, by showing the examples, we are going to win people's hearts and minds. And we're going to show that many of the people on the right wing who are stoking this hatred are really only doing it to build their political careers. They're not interested. If they're really interested in safety, then they would be as interested in non-Muslims who are stabbing or grooming as they were Muslims. But they're just not interested. They're not doing anything. They're not talking about the fact that the absolute majority of child sexual abuse that takes place is done by a relative, usually a first-degree relative. The absolute majority, like I'm talking 80+%. And if you ignore that and you talk about the 3% that's done by Muslims, then don't tell me that you're interested in child sexual exploitation. Don't tell me that you're interested in children. Similarly, for us, we need to say 3%. We cannot be those people who are like, we're 6% of the population and we're 3%. That's a loser's game. One person is one too many. We need to find out how, why, when, where. And we need to do everything we can to stop it. Drugs, prostitution, people smuggling. There was a report on the BBC about people who are smuggling people illegally from France into the UK. And the guys who are doing the smuggling are Muslims. People know who they are. We need to do everything we can to say this is not in our name. This cannot happen, because when you're doing people smuggling, you are literally profiting off people's miseries. And there are children dying in the ocean because you're putting them on rubber dinghies or whatever it may be.
So how do we look intrinsically and actually fight these issues? Because you mentioned a number of issues, which we have. And you're right, 1% is too many. So how do we fight these issues? Because personally for me, I think the first step is we have communities, especially, for example, East London, where I'm from, we have plenty of communities, but it's about coming together. And
you answered your own question.
But then let's go one level up. How do we come together? Because if there's issues, firstly we have to face the issues. We have to accept that yes, there is a grooming gang issue, there is a drugs issue, there is a laughing gas issue.
It's not complicated. The word I'm going to say again and again, and people get sick of it. Let them get sick of it, right? Because we don't have it. Like when someone is in the Sahara Desert and they have not drunk for 3 days, the only thing they're going to talk about is water, right? So this ummah has been dying en masse in their millions for more than 100 years. So yes, the only word I'm going to talk about is unity. Because that's why we're not being killed because we're not good enough Muslims. We're not being oppressed because we don't have enough money. We're not being oppressed because we don't have enough strategists. It's because we're not united. And without unity, we'll continue to be oppressed, to fail, to be losers, to be defined by the worst fringe elements of our society. So I'll give you a story of Omar Danhu, which I think encapsulates the problem in our mindset, because this is a Muslim Pound podcast, and it will make a lot of sense. When I became Secretary General, a lot of people came with a lot of advice. I'm very grateful for everyone giving or sharing their advice. You know what the number one advice I had? The number one advice I had from the major number of people was, you need money. The problem with MCB is you don't have enough money. The problem with the Muslim Council of Berlin is you don't have enough money. You need money, you need money, you need money. Let me tell you the story Umar Danhu had. Once he was sitting with some Sahaba and he said, wish, make a wish. So one of them said, I wish that this room was full of gold so I could spend it in the path of Allah. And clearly Umar Danhu was not happy with that. So he said, make another wish. So another one said, I wish this room was full of jewels and emeralds and rubies and golds and diamonds so that I could spend it in the path of Allah and give it to the poor. Umar Danhu was still not happy. He said, make a wish. So everyone realized around him that he was looking for something else. He said, what would you wish for? He said, I wish this room was full of people like Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu. It's the human capital, because he understood with money, you can only do so much. Without the human capital, you will always fail. Those people are priceless. People like Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu were worth more than a mountain of gold. And we have that here, and we're chasing money, right? We're still chasing money. We're still in that zone where we're looking around and we're building huge bank accounts for our mosques, extensions for our mosques, domes for our mosques, new carpets for our mosques, and our children are taking laughing gas. Our children are going and becoming murtad. Our children are doing whatever else that they're doing, but they're not in the mosque. We have to get out of this mentality. We're still in that mentality where we're like, when I speak to someone, I know straight away if they're serious about whatever they're doing, start a project, Islamic organization, I'm going to get money. I said, if you think about money first, then just go do something else. Money should be the last thing you think about. Think about the people, the human capital. How are you going to reach the people? How are you going to change them? Yes, money would make it easier. Of course it would make it easier. But why didn't Amazon just cash out on day one? Amazon made a loss for years. I think for almost 2 decades. Because they kept reinvesting in themselves. Now they make so much money that they don't know what to do with it. So money cannot be our starting point. Because that makes us into people who chase after the buck. Even right now, when we look at from what's going on in Gaza, we look at the other side and we say, they have so much money. They're so powerful, they have so much money. No, it's not money that makes them powerful. You have more money with the oil beneath your feet, by the way, right? What makes them powerful is that they are strong and united in what they believe. Even when they disagree with us, even when some of them have individual disagreements together, they're very united. And their human capital is everywhere. They're extremely intelligent. They work hard and selflessly for that goal. What about us? We're still chasing after our few pennies here, our few pounds there, our millionaire status here and there. So I would say that the first thing, you need to unite, bring people together. How? We need to love our brother and sister more than we love our own comfort. Because unity requires sacrifice. Above anything else, it requires sacrifice. There is a story, and apologies, I know I give very long answers, so you can edit it later. There was a leader of the Dagestanis next to Chechnya. His name was Baysungur. He had one eye, one arm, and I think one leg. He was eventually caught because he was fighting against the Russians, and they took him to Chechnya, next door. Why did they take him to Chechnya? Because they wanted to execute him in Chechnya so that there would be enmity between the Chechens and the Dagestanis for a long time. So they put this guy on a chair, tied the noose around his neck, and they gathered the Chechens and they said, kick the chair, hang him. But none of the Chechens moved. They said, kick the chair. None of them moved. They took out their machine guns. They pointed at the Chechens and they said, kick the chair or we'll kill you. What did Baysungur do? He put out his one hand and he kicked his own chair. Unity requires sacrifice. If you want us to be united, if you want this ummah to be strong, you might need to sacrifice that few extra £1,000 you're going to get by moving wherever else to build a community here. You might need to sacrifice what's good for the Pakistani community for what's good for the Nigerian community. You might need to sacrifice what's good for you today for your children tomorrow. And if you do that, we will be united, inshallah. And when we're united, we will be unstoppable, inshallah.
Inshallah. So then the next level up is to sacrifice. You have to have the mindset of sacrificing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're never going to sacrifice, and that's with anything. So how does one build that mindset? Because you're right. We look at Gaza and we say, yes, they're very strong. What can we do about it? We protest in millions and they still continue. But again, this is an issue that's been going on for 70, 80 years. So this is the peak of their issue, whereas we haven't been united like this for a long time, and we're still not united.
We're united in misery, and united in misery and suffering is different to being united in power and strength. Sorry, I interrupted you.
But you're right in that as well. So then how do we flip it and not necessarily become like them, but you use their strengths and you learn from it?
We need to build institutions and infrastructure, right? Look, you are never going to get an Apple in the Muslim world. You are never going to get a Microsoft. You're never going to get a Netflix. You're never going to get any of those. I know you have some unicorns being built up, great, like some random ones, but you're never going to get these game-changing companies. Why? Not because we're not intelligent. In fact, some of these, YouTube, one of the co-creators was a Muslim, right? It's not because we're not intelligent. It's because you haven't built the right environment. You don't have the infrastructure, right? One of my students, he was really into art, and he was just like, I don't understand why we don't build beautiful buildings anymore. In the old days, we used to build the Alhambra and the Taj Mahal. I was like, because the guy who would have built the Alhambra today, he's starving to death in Gaza, or he's begging in Indonesia, or he's just trying to make ends meet as a taxi driver in South Africa. That's why. You need to build the infrastructure. So we need to build the infrastructure. We need to be able to say, right, let's defer what makes us feel good today for what makes us powerful tomorrow. I'll give you a quick example. When I was at university, one of my projects, there was a colleague of mine. He dropped out of the project we were working on, and he said, we have to work on the Anthony Nolan Trust, doing bone marrow transplant. Because there are children dying today, not enough Muslims, not enough ethnic minorities donate bone marrow samples. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he was shocked. He said, how can you argue? There are literally children dying. We need to work on that. I said, look, bro, I know what's going to happen. You watched some video, Anthony Nolan Trust. It was amazing. You were blown away. You're going to work yourself. Maybe you'll drag in like one or two people with you, some friends. The minute you get bored, tired, get a job, get married, retire, it'll be finished. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to build an organization eventually, inshallah, that unites Muslim healthcare professionals. And then when they're all united, and you've built the infrastructure and they've got a youth team and a medical team and a nursing team, etc., one of the projects they're going to do is organ donation. And when they have that organ donation project, one of the projects that they will do, sub-project that they will do, is doing this bone marrow transplant. But I'm going to defer doing that project myself to building the infrastructure. And that's what happened. 15 years later, you have BIMA, British Islamic Medical Association. It has a department for organ donation. That department had a sub-project for bone marrow transplant, which had the second largest bone marrow transplant drive in the UK, for ethnic minorities in the UK's history. That's what it means to build an infrastructure. Instead of us just randomly just going and raising some funds, sending money to Gaza, can we put together enough money to build a legal defense fund? And can our lawyers unite so that we can challenge in the courts anyone who comes after people just for being pro-Palestine? Can we build an infrastructure which brings together the leverage so that we can get the aid into Gaza, so we cannot be undeniable? Can we build, like people have done before? Berlin was under siege by the Soviets. They did aid lift. Sarajevo was under siege. They went underneath they did tunnels underneath to the airport runway, and Sarajevo survived. So can we think outside the box? Can we build the infrastructure? At the moment, no. We don't have the infrastructure because we all want to be the guy who scores the goal in the World Cup final. None of us want to be the coach.
But then doesn't building the infrastructure then require not just human capital but funds as well?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we don't need funds. We can do this for free. But you get the human capital first. Then the funds will follow. But if you go looking for the funds, you will have the funds and nothing else. And we see this with most places. Many Islamic institutions have the funds and they're like, I don't have any volunteers. I don't have any young people. I have nobody to take over for me when I retire. Of course you don't, because you spend your whole life, you get what you work for. You work for money, you got the money. Now stroke the money to sleep, and maybe the money will be the new imam. Maybe the money will do the khutbah. Maybe the money will run your organization. But if that's not the case, invest in your future.
I was speaking to someone over the weekend about one of the local masjids. I said, every time I get a poster from the local masjid, it's a talk in Urdu. I'm like, people who are under 40 don't even speak Urdu. They don't understand it. Why are they going to come? It doesn't make sense. And then this, like we were just having a discussion, like same thing you're saying today, masajid have 7 figures. And then I was speaking to a charity, National Waqf, and I'm quite good friends with them, so I can be quite open with them. I said, why don't you guys actually just go around? You guys are in East London, just in one postcode, you have 20-25 masjids. Why don't you just go around and say, look, we have 25 masjids. If every masjid donates 50,000, some can do more, some can do less. You can then buy some land, have some property, get some income, but also that property, you can use it to house people. So it's a benefit. Absolutely. Straight away. And the answer he gave, and you probably guess as well, they don't want to work with each other. So then what's the purpose of the masjid?
It's not just the mosques. None of us want to work with each other. We have hundreds, thousands of charities. Do we need all of them?
No.
Every single one pays a CEO. Single one pays a photocopy machine. Bill this, bill that, bill. So, and when you go into any sector, we have everyone wants to create their own brand, and we need more consolidation. How, if you ask me, the way we're going to change it is we need to create a movement for unity. The grassroots need to want it, need to demand that we work together, that we consolidate, that we invest in the youth. So what will happen is that people will start leaving those institutions and defunding those institutions that still do things like talks in a language that doesn't apply to the majority of the youth, that still have policies like no women allowed, that still have lack of governance with the same guys in charge for like 20 years in a row, right? So we need to start that movement. And that's, I'm telling you now, that's our goal here in MCB, is not to bring a revolution where we fight against the past, because we are standing on the shoulders of the past, but an evolution. That this is, the reason why we like calling it evolution, if you do a revolution, there's always a counter-revolution, right? And it's messy, lots of blood on the streets. If you do an evolution, it's a slow, gradual, inevitable process. There is no word in the English language called counter-evolution. It doesn't exist. It's a one-way street. And we're going to try to accelerate the evolution, inshallah, of not only the mosques, but our charities, our institutions, our mentality, our grassroots. There's also a mentality right now, we're blaming everything. It becomes easy, right? What's wrong with the Muslim community? It's the mosques. The mosques need to do safeguarding. The mosque needs to do this. The mosque needs to teach mental health. The mosque is, like, let's be realistic. What the mosque can achieve, right? What are we doing? What else exists? So you're right. Do we need to build that pressure for unity, for consolidation, for coordination, and for best practice, inshallah.
But when a community unites, do you think if we had been united over the past 10, 15 years, we wouldn't have some of the social issues that we have, such as gangs, drugs, crimes, etc.?
You would still have them. It's not a panacea. It's not like, we're united, khalas, no one's poor, everything's great. You're still going to have those problems, but you'll be able to deal with them. Right now, let's talk about laughing gas. What can we do? Absolutely nothing. You as an individual, you might go and do a webinar for 2 or 3 people. Maybe a mosque will do a khutbah. If they're very progressive, they'll do a khutbah on it. Maybe we'll put some signs. Are we actually going to have a coordinated strategy for dealing with it? No. We're going to everyone just shooting in the wind, just hoping, something. And so we're not taking it seriously, right? Whereas if we work together, if we coordinated across the country, we have enough intelligent people who could come up with a solution and a plan to treat this as the public health emergency that it is. And we would get enough funding and we would be able to show results. I promise you, inshallah, if the Muslims decided today to unite together and stop to end laughing gas, we would be able to cut down by 10, 15, 20% in a few years' time, very easily. Same with cigarette smoking, anything. Any problem, when you unite, it doesn't disappear, but it becomes much easier to solve. When you're united, apologies, I speak in stories, I speak in analogies.
Stories is good for us anyway.
Yeah. When, what's easier to fast, Ramadan or Shawwal?
Ramadan, way easier.
Every Muslim, way easier, right? When I told this to a non-Muslim friend of mine, he was like, this doesn't make any sense. I was like, why? He's like, logically, you're saying Ramadan is 30 days in a row. Shawwal, 6 fasts, and you do it randomly. And he goes, I never heard you complain once about Ramadan, and then Shawwal, you're like, oh, it's difficult stuff. And I said, that's because Ramadan, we do it together. The whole ummah does it together. You wake up together, you break fast together, you start fast together, you pray together. Shawwal, even my family, we're not doing it at the same time as each other. Everyone's doing it randomly. It's the same with prayer. If you go to the masjid and you pray, we're going to pray Zuhr. If we pray together, you get 27 times more reward. If you pray separately, the same prayer, you get just the reward of that prayer. What difference does it make? It's just that you're doing it together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us again and again, same with Hajj, same with so many different things. Again and again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us that when you are united, I can make the impossible become possible. And when you're disunited, even the possible becomes impossible. So it's the same with any problem. If you're serious about dealing with these problems that we're suffering from, if you're serious about Islamophobia, unite. Otherwise, everything else is just talk.
So, obviously this podcast is about the Muslim pound and how we can essentially unite. And it's not just about spending on each other's businesses, but that is obviously part of it. But I believe that if the funds are utilized in the correct way, we can solve a lot of UK's problems, a lot of global problems as well. But the problem we have as a Muslim community, and you were talking about off air, is we don't have one KFC.
Yeah. I mean, people say you have Al-Baik, but it's still not the same level, right? We have, unfortunately, a mindset which is not ambitious enough. So there was a Black American father. He was speaking to a millionaire person, and he was saying, what's different? When because I'm trying everything to raise my kids to be smart and ambitious and to really be successful. What do you do differently? The millionaire gave an answer. It was brilliant. He said, the problem is your kids, when they grow up, they want to be Michael Jordan, right? Because my kids, when they grow up, they want to be the owner of the basketball club that Michael Jordan plays for. We sell ourselves short all the time. We sell ourselves short all the time. It doesn't take that much more effort to have that kind of expansionist global mindset, right? To think what I've done for my local area, it can be easily copied and pasted and everyone can benefit. But what does it take? It needs a big heart. It doesn't take a bigger brain. You've already done the work. And I see this. I'm traveling now. As Secretary General, I'm traveling across the country. You will be amazed when you go in some random madrasa. They've built the most beautiful curriculum that you've ever seen for homeschooling. You're like, this is amazing. Everyone will benefit from it. But it's just sat here in some small madrasa in Dewsbury. You go to another place, this person has figured out how to increase the number of young Muslims going into education or into entrepreneurship. He's got a program, he's developed it for 3 people on his street. It's not an access problem because now, the phone, the internet has democratized access. It is a heart problem. We need big hearts and to be ambitious, to teach our kids to be ambitious, that you are not less than anyone else, that you can achieve the most amazing things, and don't sell out too early. Don't sell out for the cash too early, right? Build bigger and bigger and better, inshallah. If we can do that, we'll do amazing things. We don't have Muslims, this is what I was saying. I've met a lot of young Muslims who want to be filmmakers. I haven't met yet the young Muslim who wants to own a film studio. Not yet.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's more, obviously you're saying it's a mindset issue, but do you think a lot of it is to do with we're chasing fame? Because Michael Jordan's, more people know about Michael Jordan than the owner of his team.
That's true. Maybe it is chasing fame. There's a ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Jannah and the beautiful, the food and the people of Jannah and all the gardens and everything. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for the likes of this, let the workers work. For right now, we stopped this ayah at for the likes. We're living in for the likes. That's it. And you need to get beyond that. Let the workers work. If you're a worker and you're building the infrastructure, it is way cooler. There was a Netflix series called House of Cards. I don't know if you ever watched it. The first series was to me, it's equivalent to a degree in politics, right? You should watch it. And the main character, Frank Underwood, he's talking to his protege, Remy Danton, who left politics to join a lobbying firm. And after they spoke and Remy left, Frank Underwood turns to the camera and he says, he went for money instead of power. And I can never respect anyone who gives up power for money, because at the end of the day, I have all the men with guns. I have all the men with power. And all he will ever have is money. And he shows throughout the series that he is able to impose his will on others. Right now, the Muslim Ummah, if you really care about the Muslim Ummah, we don't necessarily need a Cristiano Ronaldo who's Muslim, right? We need someone who builds our own, World Cup, UEFA football leagues, our own marketing teams, our own Netflix, our own, and it's not just multinationals, by the way. If you look at NGOs, some of the most successful NGOs, these are not run by Muslims, right? We've got one Islamic Relief and we're really happy about it. And mashallah, they're doing great work. But what about the others? We can be at the forefront. We should be at the forefront. The majority of the world's refugees are Muslims. The majority of the world's conflicts are Muslims. We are the experts. There's a early warning system for earthquakes. In Japan, because it's an earthquake zone in Tokyo, they've got a 45-second warning from when the earthquake happens to before it happens. They can give everyone an alert on their phone, earthquake's coming. 45 seconds is nothing. It's just enough time for those who are able to move and walk to maybe get out of their home or to shelter in place. Enough time to turn off the gas and electricity so you don't have a disaster on top, or shut the dam or whatever it may be. In Turkey, the early warning system was 2 seconds. Not enough time to even for the person who receives it to do anything, to even phone his own family. Now here's the crazy part. Turkey is the only Muslim country in the world that has an early warning system. Islamabad, Karachi, Tehran, Jakarta, Cairo, all the major Muslim cities with tens of millions of people all live on an earthquake zone.
And only one country has it.
Only Turkey has it, and it has 2 seconds. We have no excuse. Israel is mandatory for all Israeli school children to have earthquake training. What to do in an earthquake. Not in any Muslim country.
When I was in Palestine a couple months ago, while we were there, the Iran and Israel war had started.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously at the first point, it was like we didn't really know what was happening. Like we didn't know when and how, because I just thought, okay, the bombs would come across. Then we had the sirens. And I think within about 5 minutes of each siren, that's when the bombs would start. But then it's similar to what you're talking about in terms of them 5 minutes would give the Israelis time to go in the bunker.
Because they're thinking a few steps ahead. This didn't happen by accident. You know, the Hebrew University was established decades before Israel was. We should learn and study Zionism, because how did they get to where they are? I mean, how did a community which was on the verge of annihilation and the genocide become a virtual superpower? And you see that the infrastructure was being built. They built the university before they built the country. Because a country does not survive on a bank, it survives on the people. What do? We're going to try to loot every single penny we can. Our leaders are doing, and then we go on a cycle of electing these criminals and corrupt people one after another. And if there's one uncorrupt leader who comes, he goes to prison, and then we all sit back and wait.
So is a lot of it down to the education then?
I don't know if it's just education. I think we become used to being losers.
Yeah.
And when a football team, if it loses like 10 games in a row, it's the way it thinks, the way it acts, it second guesses itself. You know, you'll see that the players are like shoving each other. Right now, we're seeing what's happening in Gaza. So the community has gone from a stage of being angry at the oppressors to now we're getting angry at each other. It's all the fault of the imams. They do nothing. They're useless. Oh, it's the fault of the charities. They don't get a single penny in. Oh, or it's easy. Blame the leaders. Where did the leaders come from, by the way? You know, our leaders are so corrupt. Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send them straight from Jahannam to rule you? Or did you elect them, and do you keep them in power? Do your cousins work in those same armies and that infrastructure to keep them in power? Let's be honest here. It's easy to blame somebody else. It's so hard to blame ourselves. So I think we've got into the loser mindset. And the loser mindset is one that is very narrow-minded, very aggressive, very risk-averse, and it basically guarantees you're going to keep losing. And we need to change our mindset to have a positive mindset for the future. This is one of the reasons why, again, MCB, we set forward a Vision 2050. Not how we're going to deal with Islamophobia. 2050, inshallah, we want this community to be the most well-liked community in this country. We want this community to be the engine of growth. We want this community to be the most healthiest and to be spiritually the most consistent as well. We don't want you to be just rich and powerful and not good Muslims, right? We want to be the most spiritually consistent as well. In this country, 2050, that vision is a positive vision. And when you give a positive vision, you will see people flock towards you. Everyone is looking for someone, you know? They're looking, no one wants another companion in the shipwreck. Everyone wants a lighthouse on the shore. Be that lighthouse, and the people will flock to you, inshallah.
So how do you build this positive mindset with this positive energy if everything we're seeing is negative? Because it's not just here. We see everything that's happening in Palestine. We see things happening across the world, in Sudan and other countries. We see even Syria right now, even though it's free, there's still a lot of things going on. We see things here with Islamophobes and far right. So everything we're seeing is negative.
You have to tell the story. You have to show people what, at the Battle of Khattab, when you read about it, it was really bad times. A battle of the trench. The Muslims were virtually starving, right? The Prophet ﷺ tying stones to his belly. They were fearful. They were the biggest army they'd ever seen outside the Medina walls. And then this newfangled trench that they don't even know if it's going to work, it's not going to work, is out there. And they're all standing at the edge of the trench, guarding it. And they had to build the trench quickly. And while they're building the trench, then there was one rock they couldn't break. And they called the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, I see, he struck it. And each time he struck it, he said, I see the bangles of Kisra, I see the crown of the Caesars. And what is Prophet ﷺ doing? He's giving you, even at your worst moment, he's showing you the light. That the future is worth going for. People, no matter how long the tunnel is, no matter how dark it is, if there's a light at the end of it, you will keep moving towards it. And even if it's the shortest tunnel and there's no light, you won't move anywhere. The leaders need to share the light. What is the future going to look like? What do we need to do to get there? And the people will follow you, inshallah. Then we need to start sacrificing and celebrating. There are good things that are happening, by the way, in the community. But we talk ourselves down. We don't share that. We share the bad news. So we need to share that. And then we need to grow it. You need quick wins and you need that infrastructure to grow, inshallah.
You're right in that sense, because I was speaking to one of the imams at the local masjid, and he said, we actually went head to head with the laughing gas problem, and we knocked on the doors of the kids, spoke to their parents and everything. And it's a very united community. But I said that I didn't know about it. I said, you need to improve your PR then. He goes, yeah, we didn't release a statement or nothing afterwards. We just did it. But then if you told that story and you could have easily grabbed the local paper, and everyone, Muslims and non-Muslims, would have seen that this masjid has combated a laughing gas problem, which is affecting everyone. It's affecting people who do the laughing gas and people who don't do it.
Exactly. Car accidents, families, God knows, it's horrible.
So then how important of a role is media? Because we don't control the media. Like we were talking about X, a lot of that's far right. Instagram, you get shadow banned. YouTube, you get shadow banned. The legacy media, we have no control over that. We have Islam Channel, we have Al Jazeera, but that's about it.
Now you can still share your stories, right? Look, Nike gave Cristiano Ronaldo the biggest sponsorship deal that any sportsman has ever had in history. I think it was like $1 billion, right? Literally made him a billionaire overnight. And they said something which it was shocking to me. They explained why they were giving it, which they didn't need to do. I don't know why they did it. They said, we're not giving it to him because he's a good football player. We're giving it to him because he's got 500 million followers on social media. As individuals, we're not all Ronaldo. We are able, as individuals, as communities, to build a following, right? You've seen that with Mamdani. You've seen that with loads of people who come out of nowhere, right? If you have something genuine to sell, to talk about, people will follow that, right? That Khabi Lami guy, he was working in a factory. All he does is this. But what he's showing is the ridiculousness of so many of these hacks that are going around. And he's a millionaire now. Mashallah, like he's done amazing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it easier than it's ever been before. In the past, you have to own a newspaper or have a TV channel. Now, you just have to have an account and you have to be genuine and you have to be willing to go for it. And we can do it. And we need our younger generation to say, I'm going to make the next one. Not, I want to be an influencer on this one. Teach them from now. Teach them to go a step further than their own horizons are. When I have my medical students, I tell them, come up with some ideas, right? Plans, whatever. I want you to write your essay on it. And almost all of them, they lowball it. Come up. I was like, if I asked you to dream about a car, any car, and you came back to me and you dreamed about a 1995 Toyota Corolla, 30,000 on the miles, and broken windscreen, I would think you're mad. Because I told you to dream about any car, so you should think about amazing. I didn't tell you to buy the car, I told you to dream about it, right? So dream big. Get them to be dream ambitious. Tell them the stories about how ambitious Muslims were, how we used to be. Show them when they go on holiday, don't just take them to a beach for God's sake. How much can they get in Antalya, right? in Hurghada or whatever else, you take them to these beaches. For God's sake, go and show them the beautiful buildings and the mosques. Tell them the stories of our ancestors. And if you don't know the stories, then learn them, then tell it to them, because that's raising your children, not giving them just clothes or whatever. Like a stranger could do that. But teach them these values. Teach them to be ambitious, not just for themselves, but for the ummah, inshallah.
So what lessons, because you're very interested in Islamic history, what lessons can we take from Alhambra? What lessons can we take from Uzbekistan and places like that where Islam has come to the forefront for the whole of civilization, not just the Muslims?
There's so many. In any one of the buildings, I'll use an example I think that people can understand. The Hagia Sophia. Yeah, Hagia Sophia is now back to a mosque, inshallah, in Istanbul, and it used to be a church. If you go to the Hagia Sophia, there's a dome. When it was a church, before the Muslims had taken it over, the dome started crumbling, and they didn't have anyone in the Byzantine Empire who could fix it, who had the skills. The people who had the skills, they were there before, but now they no longer existed. So it was chivalry at the time. The Byzantine emperor wrote a letter to Sultan Murad, the father of Muhammad Fatih, and said, do you have an engineer that could help me fix this? I don't want it to crumble. And out of good grace, he said, fine, yes, I have an engineer. He's amazing. He will do it. So I think his name was Hussein. Hussein went and did whatever he did. He came back. When he came back to the court, Sultan Murad asked, he said that, did you fix the dome? He goes, I did everything. I fixed the dome, and I also put in place the foundations for our minarets. Because he had that confidence. They all started laughing. He went to do one thing, but while he was there, he was like, this is where our minarets will look nice here. They didn't even own Istanbul at that time, right? So when you tell these stories, it's amazing. When you go and you look at Hagia Sophia, like this round thing you've got over here, you've got the round calligraphy roundels.
Yeah.
When Mustafa Kemal turned it into a museum, he ordered that they all be destroyed. And the person who was in charge of destroying them, because he was a good Muslim, he didn't want them destroyed, he hid them away in storage. So a few decades later, Prime Minister Adnan Menderes came into power, who was much more sympathetic towards Islam and Muslims. And when he discovered that they existed still, he said, put them back up. So they put them back up. One of the reasons they executed Adnan Menderes, because he was executed as a prime minister, him, his foreign minister, and I think his finance minister, they were executed, was because of this. So when you see those up there, you should know that a prime minister was martyred to keep them there. When you see those minarets, you should know that they were envisaged before we even had conquered Istanbul. That's what confidence means. And everywhere you go, from the Badshahi Mosque in Pakistan to the Jama Masjid in Delhi to the Great Mosque in Timbuktu, everywhere you go, there are all these stories that are there for us to share with our children and to share with our next generation to inspire them.
Everything goes back to vision, but with a great vision comes sacrifice. And again, everything's coming back to sacrifice as well. Because then that's how you unite. You need to sacrifice for the greater good.
You need to sacrifice anything. If you want to get a good job, you got to sacrifice. You want to get a good podcast, you need to sacrifice. It's nothing. You want to be a football player, you need to sacrifice. So it's not surprising. It's just that we think we don't need to do it to that level for Islam or for us to be successful. So it's much more easy. I'll give you an example. There's a medical brand called Teva. It's an Israeli company. So a lot of Muslims are like, we should boycott it. I looked into it and I found out 1 in 5, this is a crazy thing, 1 in 5 of all drugs in the UK is from that company. 20%. And I thought to myself, you know what would be amazing? More amazing than boycotting Teva is to make your own.
Yeah.
But that would require sacrifice, time, energy, hard work. And just sacrifice, it was just me saying, don't do that. Don't drink Coca-Cola. Don't do that. I'm not saying don't boycott. Of course, that's part of the strategies that we have in front of us. But we need someone somewhere to be saying, why don't we have our own drug companies? or that to that level? Why don't we have our own soft drinks, or and so on and so forth? And what can we do? And I know that we have Gaza Cola and Salam Cola, and these are existing, which are great. Why can't we go to that next level? Be ambitious, inshallah.
So part of the Muslim pound is we're boycotting, like you just said right now, but we're not building our own. So we're boycotting Coca-Cola, and now we have Salam Cola, and that's the perfect example. And obviously Salam Cola is now in, I think, 20 plus countries. But also we need Salam Cola to become as big as Coca-Cola.
As big as Coca-Cola. And what are the problems with Coca-Cola? Because Coca-Cola is contributing towards diabetes. What we don't want is a Muslim drink that gives us all diabetes. We have enough problems, right? We don't need a Muslim Marlboro, right? So what can we do, right? That also leans into that information that helps the Muslim community. For example, there's a project that British Islamic Medical Association does called Lifesavers. They teach CPR. It's at the end of September. Every September, every year. CPR is free. Free knowledge. Anyone can have it. It's absolutely 100%.
So you were the founder of Lifesavers, right?
One of the people there. So one of the cities in America, Seattle, everyone knows CPR because they're taught it in school. If, nauzubillah, somebody's heart stops on the street in Seattle, they have a 33% chance of survival. If in London, if someone's heart stops, you have a 15% chance. That's because we have a heart attack centers.
It's 33% in Seattle.
33% in Seattle, 15% in London. In Karachi, 0%.
No infrastructure, no training.
There's no training. It's free to train people. It's free. We have that knowledge in our head. That's literally the first time I taught it in my local mosque. I asked any questions, and one person, he raised his hand. He said, "If you taught us this last year, maybe my daughter would still be alive." I felt like the ground should swallow me. So yes, we need to sacrifice, and sacrifice means sacrifice the most difficult thing. This is, there's a saying by a scholar that if you need a reminder, the grave is sufficient. And if you need an enemy, your nafs is sufficient, your ego. It's easier to conquer countries, conquer entire continents, than it is to conquer your ego. That's the sacrifice. Sometimes we have to say, I know I want to be in charge, but this person may be better, or this person is in that position right now, Bismillah. Or I know I am in charge, but I need to leave to bring that next generation in. Or I know that I want to invest in building a mosque with my name on it, but maybe actually I need to take that money and invest in building the public affairs infrastructure of the Muslim community, so on and so forth.
But then growing up as a Muslim is difficult in the West, not just for a lot of the reasons we've mentioned. We also have a cost of living issue where the prices of everything is going up. The price of basic things such as housing, rice, milk, all of that is going up. And then parents with 2-3 kids, they're not entirely happy with our education system because of the things that they're teaching, such as LGBT, which it's not just Muslims who are against. Non-Muslims are not happy that this is being taught in our education system. And then we have the crimes and everything we've spoken about. So how does one the everyday Muslim, dealing with all these pressures and all these issues, and this is away from our cultural and societal expectations, then make them sacrifices for the greater good?
You don't have to sacrifice your money. It's sacrifice your efforts and your time towards building a united platform, united infrastructure for the greater good. What is a good way of saying that? If you are doing anything well, let's say you're someone, you manage to educate your children, they got into good jobs, right? Get into university, you educated them, you pushed them. That same effort, all I'm asking is that you package it and you make it available to a wider community. That same effort. You have a ummatic mindset as opposed to a personal mindset. And it's not a huge shift. I'm not asking you to learn something you didn't know, to learn a new language, to give up more money, more time. That same energy, that same effort, you could do it for your children, do it for everyone. You could do it for yourself. You are very good, you go to the gym, you exercise, etc. You know that we have the worst health outcomes. that same effort, that same energy, help your local community and say, we need to be more healthy. We need to push for this. It doesn't take a huge amount more, but it just takes, it's a shift in mindset more than a shift in resources, more than it is a shift of your energy and your time. It's a shift in mindset that we need. That's what we're asking for. And if we make that shift, inshallah, we will see that we build this culture, the entrepreneurial culture. We were talking beforehand, this chaiwala, right? It's a great idea. Very good store, executed brilliantly. What did we do? 10 other chaiwalas, one with one less I, one with one extra A, even copied the branding. What are we doing by doing that? What we're doing is we're making sure that we never have another store like that again, because anyone who looks like us, why would I do this? I'm going to do something cheap and dirty and disgusting because nobody's going to copy that. But if I do something good, they're going to copy it. They're going to copy it on the same street, and then they're going to split the customers. As a Muslim community, we should be like, no, if you're a knockoff, then you can go away. We're gonna reward those who have done the right thing, and those who are doing the right thing. So we need. It's not a huge shift. I'm not telling you don't drink at chaiwala. I'm saying go to the original, and make it clear to the others that this is not acceptable. That we need to move from a mentality where we're constantly trying to take that pie and cut smaller and smaller pieces of it, to making a pie factory where everyone can have a pie. And we see that with charities. One charity gets the idea, let's put a clothes bin outside a mosque. Then another charity comes along and says, how much money are they giving you? They're not giving you any money. I'm going to give you £100. Get rid of their clothes bin. Then another charity comes and says, I'll give you £200. Suddenly you're getting £1,000 for a clothes bin outside a mosque. It doesn't make any sense. So again, strategically, as a community, we need to start moving towards consolidation. We need to move towards shifting our mindset as opposed to shifting resources.
Who does the strategic mindset start with? Because building something strategic for the long term isn't easy, but you have great ideas. People like Umar Sulaiman from Wahid, Ibrahim Khan, in the finance space, there's brilliant ideas and they're collaborating quite well. But then at what point do we come together and say, right, let's actually sit down, map out a whole 150-year vision, because I always say Muslim Pound is a 150-year vision, is beyond our generation. And then where does it actually start?
It's happening. Like you said, there are amazing individuals and organizations now, mashallah, all across the country, all across the Muslim world, right? Whether it's Launch Good, whether it's IFG, whether it's Wahid, whether it's Thinking Muslim, so many now, mashallah. And each are doing very well in their own fields, in their own area, and many of them know each other. We all know, we know each other. We're starting to connect, and we need to connect more. We need to coordinate more. I like saying that the dots are all there. Just need to start joining them up now, and that is happening slowly. We need to accelerate it, inshallah. I don't know if there's going to be any one individual organization that does that, but for the UK, that's what the Muslim Council of Britain exists for, right? There's an obligation on us as Muslims to pray, so we built the mosque. There's an obligation on us as Muslims to eat halal food, so we built the halal food industry. There's an obligation on us as Muslims to unite. And that's why this organization exists, to bring together all the different strands, not to boss them around, but to coordinate between all of them. There is a British Muslim Lawyers Alliance being built up. There is a Muslim Engineering Network. There isn't a Muslim Accounting Network, as far as I'm aware. It doesn't exist.
And there's loads of Muslim accountants.
So it's a shame on you guys. What are you doing? Start now. Start with a WhatsApp group. Don't have to start with like, we need a constitution or whatever. No, just start with a WhatsApp group and it will transform from there, inshallah. It will become one. But this is what the people are coming together. It is happening. And the MCB, our role is to help build that coordination, bring the people together so that we leverage the expertise of everyone for the benefit of everyone, inshallah.
Inshallah. So do you think the MCB can essentially act as a board to help deliver these strategic objectives?
We don't want to deliver the strategic objectives because the grassroots organizations will do that. Why should MCB deliver the healthcare objectives when we're not healthcare specialists? British Islamic Medical Association is. Why should we deliver the mosque objectives when the Council of Mosques exists? So it's for us to coordinate, to bring together, like COVID was a very good example actually. When the emergency COVID hit, while Boris Johnson and his government was still deciding what to do or what not to do, we had meetings because we saw what was happening in Italy. In Italy, whether you're a Muslim or not, it doesn't matter. Everyone was getting cremated. No one was getting to see their relatives. The doctor themselves was taking a WhatsApp picture of the loved one who died, sent it to them and said, that's it, khalas, end of story. And in the night, the army would come, and you have videos, you can see this. Army would come and take away all the bodies every night from the hospital. That many people were dying. The rate of 4 or 5 airplanes a day crashing out of the sky. We saw this, the British Islamic Medical Association. We sat down with MCB because we had started building relationship with them. And then we said, let's get everyone, get the scholars, get everyone who needs to be in the room, get them together in the room. And we said it very clearly. MCB said, BIMA are running this. It's a healthcare emergency. We don't need a lawyer running it. We need the medics running it. And alhamdulillah, I feel like, that crisis was one which the Muslim community did exceptionally well in. The mosques were the first places of worship to close before any other. The Church of England contacted us and said that, because you guys came out so strongly and so early, now we're going to do the same. We advocated for the mosque closure a week before the government did. And it wasn't just mosque closure. It was masks. It was, 2-meter distances, all of this kind of stuff. So it won't be the MCB delivering. It will be the grassroots of the Muslim community. It will be the experts delivering. But there needs to be a coordinating layer. There needs to be a uniting force. People who are pushing for team unity. Because the tendency, like I said, when you've been losing for so long, people start even saying, we've never been united. That's rubbish.
Yeah, so what's the point?
Yeah, what's the point? Or they start bickering and start arguing, and to stamp down on that and keep showing that the way forward, keep people focused on that journey ahead, that light at the end of the tunnel, inshallah.
I want to ask you one final thing. Obviously, MCB, this was before you were the Secretary General, did a report on the Muslim pound, and that was more on the spending power and how the benefit financially. What does the Muslim pound mean to you?
It's a very good question. So the Muslim pound to me, and I think the reason why MCB did it in the first place, it is one key part of the infrastructure of the Muslim community, right? Because it means that this community is a economically productive community. It is a community that is not only self-sufficient, that will be of net benefit to others. Not just because of our values, but because we add value to the GDP. And that's not the reason why people should appreciate us, but we are doing that as well. It gives you confidence because we built this narrative in our head that we're leeches, and we're being told by others constantly, right? You're being told that you're illegal immigrants, you're leeches, you're this. And you think, this is what we are. No, we're not. When you look at the hard evidence, we are productive. We're entrepreneurial. We're hardworking. We are adding value. We're adding to the mosaic of the community, right? And that's what it means to me. It means hard evidence that the Muslims can be economically not only self-reliant, self-sufficient, but we move from being the begging hand to the giving hand. And always make dua that you are the giving hand and never the begging hand. So that's what it means to me. It means that we have a vision, inshallah, for the future of this community, that we are going to move towards a community that can invest, not just for our sake, but for everyone's sake. England, again, we have to believe it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? Britain, I would encourage people to go and go to the Churchill War Rooms, right next to Downing Street. It's the underground bunkers where they ran the British Empire during World War II. Take your children there and see what it means, because they ruled all our countries from that bunker. And they knew how many grains of rice there were in Bengal in India. And they knew how many ships there were off the coast of Malaysia. And they knew everything, the price of wheat in Sudan. They knew it, and they were marking it, and they were tracking everything. They were running a war that was taking place in the sky, in the land, in the oceans, underground, in every continent on the world. And when you read the books, they say that Britain and the Allies won the war not because they had the better army or the better strategy. It's because they had the better economic machine. As a community, they had more money. Germany just could not survive economically. For every one tank Germany was losing, Britain was building 10, 20. America was building hundreds, just churning them out. You can't win, right? So Britain has done amazing things in the past, and the Muslims, we have done amazing things in the past too. And now both of us have fallen on hard times, and we're here. I think we are going to be the economic powerhouse of this country, inshallah. And we're going to help it become not only economically powerful for itself, but for the rest of the world, including the Muslims.
And it has to be a unified economic powerhouse.
Exactly. The Boris Johnson had that phrase, build back better. Right? For who? So we go one step further, build back fairer and better. It's a society in which you have more and more millionaires and richer millionaires and billionaires, and the rest who are poor is an unstable society, right? It's a society that will implode, that will eat itself, and it will eventually fail. It's basically Tsarist Russia.
Yeah.
And that was not a model that anyone can look at and say, yeah, that was something we need to emulate again. And we know how it didn't work very well with the Tsars. What you want is a society, not a communist society. Again, we're not communists. Muslims are the perfect. We're not communists, we're not capitalists. We're Muslim. We have our own system, we have our own values, and a lot of people from both ends of the spectrum will start coming towards that because they will see that actually capitalism hasn't worked for everyone and communism hasn't worked for anyone. Can we find something in between? Muslims have a product that is absolutely amazing economically that the world wants. We just need to make sure that we unite so that we can put it forward to everyone in the best way possible.
Inshallah, and I hope we see that very soon, and I wish you all the success in your role as well.
Jazakallah
to
khair.
build a more unified Muslim Council of Britain and Muslims in Britain.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.